How Diablo 4 is redefining itemization. A lot of people link me this video, and I figured I'd watch it.
Today's video, we're going to discuss how Diablo 4's approach to itemization is in many ways revolutionary, but also sticks to the tried and true systems we love from
I feel like it's the exact same as Diablo Immortal. Okay.
past Diablo games. After all, Diablo 2 is the game that set the standard for so many games that came after it. Many proclaim
Maybe
it
maybe you know
had
something I don't know.
perfect itemization, and to this day, many games still look to Diablo 2's itemization for inspiration. Now, when it comes to Diablo 4, one of the most innovative new features and what I think is genius is that the appearance of weapons and equipment will be based on the region they are found in. Now, this is incredible. Items will actually look different based on zone. So a chest...
That's really cool. So it's like transmog for... Yeah, this is kind of like, you know how like in New World, for example, you can get the same piece of gear, but if you get it from Genesis, it looks like it's made out of like bark, but if you get it from Tempest, it looks like it's made out of fucking like metal.
Armor found in Skazglen might have a more druidic look than a chest armor found in Kyrgyzstan, which has a more arid environment, and therefore you might find the chest armor with more of a baggy cloth look to it. Now, this is something completely new to ARPGs or any game, as far as I know, and really helps with immersion, since you would think you would find items that look like they're from the zone you're in. Now, I'm really excited to see if the same exact item dropping in two different zones looks different depending on the zone you found it in, right? And so that would be...
I think that will probably be true for like yellow items, but probably not true for uniques. Like, for example, Andariel's visage has a very defined look. Scorn has a very defined look. Like, you can't have a druidic Scorn, and you can't have a, cloth version of Andariel's visage, for example.
That the artists are designing multiple appearances for the exact same item.
But maybe you will.
Flip side,
I don't know. That'd be really cool if they did that.
Items only drop in their zones and nowhere else. Either way, however they end up doing, I think it's a very cool immersive design that's different than what we've seen in the past. Now, we've seen a few item tooltips and they're looking pretty great, but what we haven't seen live yet is that item tooltips are actually going to automatically adjust themselves when calculating lucky hit chance depending on what skill is equipped. Now, the reason for this is because different skills have different proc coefficients, and so...
Oh, I get it. Okay, so it's kind of like how different spell... Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it. Yeah, different spells have different percentages.
So by changing your skills while hovering over an item, you can see in real time how...
I really like this, by the way, because I think that one of the weaknesses that Path of Exile has is that a lot of the nuances to its itemization are not easily understandable. Like, it doesn't really make sense that Righteous Fire doesn't hit targets, for example. But, like, Righteous Fire does not technically hit a target. So anything that changes with spell hits doesn't matter. And increased and more. Is there a reason as a... Like an English language reason why increased is additive and more is multiplicative that is intuitive for a user to understand? The answer, I think, is no.
That changes your proc coefficient. Now, this is a great change, I believe, that will really help players better understand their proc chances based on the current skill equipped, and really just help players optimize their build by letting them switch through their skills and realize, oh, this is probably the best skill to use with this lucky hit, for example. So
I think this is extremely good. And I'm really happy to see this, because I think one of the worst things about PoE that makes it hard to get into is that you see a build guide video and it's a 30-minute video and there's no gameplay in it. It's just a bunch of spreadsheets and like this fucking calculator with like all of these like simulations and shit like this. And the best part is that all of the comments are like, wow, bro, this looks awesome. Holy shit, I'm so excited. I can't wait to play this next league. Oh my god, man. I'm so ready to no life this. This is going to be amazing.
I think this is awesome.
Yeah, they love it.
It's going to help the player not have to.
I think it makes it hard to get into the game.
Browsing, and they can just stay in the game. And
yeah, you should not have to use a third-party tool to min-max the game. You should not have to use a third-party tool to Theorycraft.
figure it out for themselves. And if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more Diablo 4 content. Now, usually all characters in a Diablo game would typically equip a total of around 10 items, but in Diablo 4, barbarians are able to equip a total of 12 because of the arsenal system, which lets barbarians use different weapons for different skills.
Because we're better.
And rogues who can equip a total of 11 items because they're not as good. Additional ranged weapon. This is a very cool innovation for Diablo, which I'm actually interested to see how they end up balancing it, because an extra item slot in a game like Diablo, I feel like could really tip the scales, especially.
I disagree with that. Basing what they're going to do, I am assuming what they're going to do is going to be based off of like kind of New World. So for example, if you have a shield equipped, or actually, like, there are a number of different ways you can look at it. Basically, if you have a shield equipped to your character and you don't have a sword also equipped, the bonuses from the shield are not active. And I think what they're going to do with Diablo 4 is that the weapon swaps will change your stats dynamically inside of combat. And the weapons that you don't have currently active will not be active stats. I'm assuming. If they don't do that, it's going to be fucking broken.
Actually a weapon in the barbarians case, or I guess both of them have weapons, right? This makes barbarians and rogues more hungry for loot, which means players might find it harder to find exactly what they're looking for because of the changes coming to trade. Now,
this is a good insight, and I think he's definitely right about this, that it could make it more annoying to build a barbarian or a rogue if you know that you need more items. But I think that as long as they don't design it to where, like, you need, for example, like, I'm kind of guessing that, you know, ground slam or earthquake or something like that, maybe you can't use this with a sharp weapon and you have to use a blunt weapon instead. Like, hopefully that's not mandatory until very high into the end game.
Diablo 2, trading was a great way to collect all of your best items. You might find the best weapon for Necromancer, but
it's relevant for Mega Man
so
maxing,
you want to trade it for one of your best items.
Yeah, it's like how in Path of Exile, people will use, like, they will have an item swap macro, or not macro, actually. They'll have an item, like a weapon swap, like, you know, a weapon swap to get Rampage, for example, or a weapon swap to debuff a target, and then they swap back to their main weapon to kill the target.
Maybe you'll just make a Necromancer later.
But you don't need to do that until you're doing Uber,
like, for the purpose of this example, let's say you want to trade the item, right? Well, in Diablo 4, trading is going to be somewhat restricted. Certain items will be bound to your character and untradeable the moment you pick them up.
Not a fan.
They are bound to your character and cannot be traded. This is called bind on pickup, and this is a system in
what I would hope they do is they would make it designed the same as Diablo 3 on release was designed. Well, actually, I hope that they make everything tradable. Everything should be tradable. I will not accept any excuse that Blizzard has that they cannot moderate a game whenever Path of Exile is fucking free and they're able to moderate RMT, but Blizzard in their buy-to-play game can't do it. Miss me with that bullshit. Hire more people, stop taking away their bonuses, and maybe it'll be okay. Yeah, absolute bullshit. However, if they were to come to a middle ground, I would love to see, remember back in Diablo 3 whenever it got released, how like yellow items were actually some of the best items in the game? And like you have like a yellow staff or like a yellow mace that was, you know, like top 10 in the world for DPS outside of like an Echoing Fury or something like that. So I would be okay with that if uniques were not tradable, but yellows were. But yellows were extremely competitive even at the highest level with the uniques. I guess I would be okay with that.
World of Warcraft, preventing certain powerful items from being traded. Developers have stated the main source for items should be from killing monsters, which I tend to agree with.
Which is in Path of Exile. The main source of items is killing monsters. You kill the monsters, then you sell the loot, and then you get the items.
I'm hopeful, though, that there will be a way to exchange items and equipment of value with other players in some form, and I think there will be, since the Diablo community is so creative. Now, moving on to what items actually do in Diablo 4. Affixes have always been exciting and a core part of Diablo. Now, one affix in particular from Diablo.
I really wish that games like New World would take more from Diablo in this way. I hate it whenever affixes, and I felt the same way, honestly, about Dark and Darker. A lot of the, like, high-end items, none of them felt like they were transformative enough to where, like, I was like, oh, wow, this is completely changing my gameplay. I like it whenever items are actually really strong and different.
2 that was not in Diablo 3 is finally returning to the Diablo universe, and that is the plus skill rank affix. Like in Diablo 2, different skills roll on specific
that's like
item
in
slots. So for example,
PoE.
some items only appearing on certain weapons, like in Diablo 2, Wolf's Head Helms had Druid.
I really hope that they don't let this happen and make it to where the plus, because like you guys know, like how many of you guys did like a carrion golem build or something like that, where like plus level to carrion gems was just like, the value of it was so high and so good that it just eclipsed everything. So I just hope that this is well balanced and we don't see like this blue axe being better than Scorn because it has +4 ranks. Remember like Cold Iron Pick and stuff like that, or Cold Iron Point?
Skills,
examples
staves
like that.
had sorceress skills, and what I'm actually interested to see here is if we can get other classes skills. So for example, in Diablo 2 Act 3.
Sorry, I have so much to say about this. I keep pausing over and over. Somebody says plus to skills is so lame. I totally disagree with you. And the reason why I disagree with you is because the plus level to skills hits different breakpoints. So for example, there's a breakpoint at 26, I think, that allows you to summon an extra carrion golem. And there's also a breakpoint at 21 or 22 or 23, I forgot which one. It's one of those three that allows you to summon an extra skeleton. And then also like with Righteous Fire, for example, if you have level 28 Righteous Fire, Specters are 21, I think. And fucking like if you have Righteous Fire, every other level makes your Righteous Fire larger. So what you had people doing is they were actually using bows, because bows had the most level bonuses for Righteous Fire. Like I'll show you just really, really quick. I don't want to go off the rails on this, but let me see if I can find it. It was like, what's his name? Captain Lance or something like that. Fuck. This was from like a year ago, so I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. What was his name? Lance? Yeah, it was Lance something. I just remember, like, what the fuck was his name? Oh, God. Okay, well, anyway, I go back and find this. Captain Lance, yeah. Maybe this one. I'm not sure if this is it or not. Let's see. No, it's not. Well, anyway, I could go on and talk about this a million times. The point is that being able to get extra levels, the extra levels and ranks to the spell become interesting because they're not scaling linearly. Like there are different breakpoints, and like kind of think of it as like steps in a staircase. So like if you're halfway up one step, you might as well have not really gone up at all. But if you can get up to all the way up, oh shit, that's a big difference. So I do think that, and actually hitting those breakpoints makes it very interesting. So I understand why you think that, but if you understand the way that it works in Path of Exile, you would see how it can actually be very interesting.
You could buy a Staff of Teleport, and that was amazing. It just enabled you to get around so much easier, right? You ran into a dead end, well, now you can teleport and get right back on your way. But Teleport was a sorceress skill, and so being able to have that as a class other than sorceress was really, really cool. So I hope that's something that can happen again in Diablo 4 with the...
I disagree. I hope that you're not able to teleport with every class, because teleporting, I think, is really boring gameplay, and it makes it to where you have like a Flame Dash, for example, or Lightning Warp, where every single person is spamming Flame Dash and Lightning Warp. Another example of this is in New World. So in the first beta, it wasn't even a beta at this point, it was a preview event of New World. The life staff had this ability, and you would go, whoa, whoa, and you would zoom forward, and every single person had this life staff. And it became a mandatory thing, because if you're farming and you want to be serious about the game, everybody is using the life staff. And if you're not using it, you're not keeping up. So in my opinion, I hope that they make teleporting only for sorceress, or only for one specific class, because I think the gameplay of that is so powerful that people will feel like they have to do it in order to maintain competitiveness.
Plus skill rank affixes, which are coming back. Okay, moving on to item qualities, which Diablo 2 established years and years ago and is still used in so many modern games, including Diablo 4. Item qualities include normal, magic, rare, legendary, set, and unique. Normal items will have no affixes. Magic items will have affixes, such as plus 7% resource regeneration.
Yellow is
rare
3.
items will have affixes that are usually better than magic items and can also have legendary affixes. Legendary items modify skills like in Diablo 3, but unlike Diablo 3, Blizzard has emphasized that they're not going to rain from the sky, meaning they're going to be much more rare, even though there will be...
I worry that this will be true for the first 6 months of the game. And what I think Diablo 4 really has to worry about is going down the route of PoE, because think about how much hate Chris got whenever he scaled things back from Harvest. Because I'll be honest, guys, I actually think harvest crafting was massively fucking overpowered. But the problem is once you give people the keys to the castle, it's really hard to take them away.
Hundreds of legendary items in the game. Now this is awesome because being able to spend years and years playing Diablo 4 and still not find like certain items is what I'm looking forward to. So I hope they put...
I don't like that. I know what he's using as an example is it Tyrael's fucking... God damn it, where's the chest? What's the chest piece called? Not Tyrael's Visage. It's a Tyrael chest in Diablo 2. Tyrael's Might. Yeah, Tyrael's Might. I actually don't like that design, where an item is just so fundamentally rare that you might not ever see it. However, I do think there's a middle ground. So, like, I think mirrors and PoE are too rare. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Mageblood or Headhunter. Well, the difference with Mageblood and Headhunter, and the reason why I think that it's actually okay that they exist in the way they do in Diablo, or sorry, in PoE, is that in order to get a Mageblood, or I mean, I know a Headhunter, like I Ancient Orb to Headhunter, and I did it in Metamorphosis League. It was amazing. And then I quit the game the day after because that's all I wanted, and I got what I wanted, and I was like, well, I don't really care about playing with this item, I just wanted the item. And I got it, so I quit. And so anyway, I actually wasn't streaming at that time either. It was on break. And so anyway, there's like a bunch of other ways that you can get Headhunter. And there are ways that are more and less deterministic, right? So you have running certain map mods. Now, they changed this recently, but let's just assume that they didn't. You also have Chance Orbs, but these only work with leather belts. And then you also have Ancient Orbs, which are much more deterministic comparatively to Chance Orbs. But they don't require an item base. They only require a belt, period. And then you also have, of course, the, what do you call it? The divination cards like doctors, nurse, etc. But also keep in mind as well, you have you can just buy it. You can just go on the PoE trade and buy the item. That's it. Or you can buy towards the item. You can buy maybe a doctor a week, or a doctor like every couple of days if you're farming a lot. Like, there's a lot of ways that you can do it. So the only thing that I like what he's saying, having the item drop. You can play the game for years and maybe never have the item drop. But I don't agree with the idea that you can play the game for years and never be able to obtain the item. Does that make sense? And I really like the way that PoE does it with Mageblood and Headhunter, for example.
a ton of items that are rare in the game, and it just takes a long time to eventually see them. I think it's going to be a really fun way to explore Diablo 4 and make finding legendaries so much more meaningful. Now, legendaries will fall into a couple different categories, like generic, which any class can find useful. Yeah. Something like enemies hit by your basic skills increase the damage of your next core skill by 20%. Or they'll be skill specific, which only a certain class like sorceress could find useful. Something like each time chain lightning bounces, gain 6 mana. Set items aren't going to be in the game at launch, but will be at...
I also hope that this is personal. Some people might disagree with this. I hope that items and class set items are the best items. Absolutely. I don't want it to be where, like, you have a Diablo 3 situation where, like, Witching Hour, as far as I know, like, for the longest time whenever I played the game, this was the best belt. And the reason why it was the best belt is because it had 10% crit, and, sorry, like, it was like 5 or 10% attack speed and 50% crit chance. It was just the best belt if you wanted to do damage. Oh, sorry. I don't care about set items. I care about items that modify spells in a unique way. Like the Talrasha 6-piece. I would love it if the Talrasha 6-piece was what's meta and not just a 6-piece bonus that increased your damage by 600%. Because I just find it to be more interesting. And also it's easier to balance.
Added post-launch and will be less powerful or equal in power to legendary items, and are really just meant to allow players to live out certain class fantasies or act as an introduction to the class. It was whenever I played too. Not so much as an endgame best-in-slot item like they are in Diablo 3, where every season has you going straight for your class set, which sort of destroyed the player's opportunity for any sort of equipment creativity. The last type of item quality is uniques. These are items which you design your build around that have fixed affixes and are heavily tied to class-specific powers and themes. Very excited to see what some of those are.
Yeah, the unique items. That's kind of what I mean. I am curious. How do you guys feel about corruption? Like a corruption mechanic in Diablo 4. High risk, high reward. Good, you like it. Corruption was good. Corruption was good. But corruption was also like, no, it keeps you playing. It does. Like, think about how many times people would continue playing because they were looking for like a +2 to auras on chests or something like that. I don't know. Corruption like New World? No, corruption like PoE. Like rank 3 Altar of Sacrifice at Xeria's Temple. Or not at Xeria, so at Xeria can be in the temple, but in the fucking Temple of Atzoatl.
I'm also really excited to see that the item qualities appear to be a mixture of Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. I personally love...
I hate to also say it, but a lot of these... It reminds me a lot of Diablo Immortal.
Love Diablo 2 item qualities the best, but I think Diablo 3 legendaries were actually a lot of fun too, in the way that they could...
Diablo 3 legendaries were actually a lot of fun. I agree. I remember whenever I got the fucking... We'll go all the way back. Like, I'm talking about Asmongold Diablo 3. Okay, where the fuck is this? Yeah, this is the old stuff. And wait, recently uploaded... Oh, no, they changed this, didn't they? Oh, my God. I remember whenever I got my 6-piece Talrasha set, like 2 weeks or 1 week into the first part of Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls, and I could just walk around, and I could do a fucking rift without casting a spell. That's how overpowered this shit was. It was amazing. Let me see if I can I find this somewhere? Oh, fuck, where is it? Yeah, look at this. This was so fucking good. Just literally walking around doing absolutely fucking nothing. Complete passive build. You were a wizard? I was an Archon wizard. I hit Paragon 100 in base Diablo 3. And I quit the game 2 days afterwards because that's all I cared about. Yeah, I was so happy whenever I got this fucking set. Oh my God, my dick was so big. It was amazing. Let's go back to the video. Essentially righteous fire. Yes. Well, it's actually, I mean, actually a better analogy would be more like a ward loop, because you're casting multiple spells, because Tal Rasha would actually have a chance to proc all of the different weapon elements at the same time. It would actually be another good example would be the Betrayal set in Lost Ark.
Could augment your character and sort of inspire you to play in a certain way. Now, I've seen the new inventory, and you can actually see here it's organized into 4 different tabs. You've got equipment, consumables, quest items, and aspects. This can be helpful to stay organized, but it also hints at the possibility that we may be looting a lot of quest items and holding on to a lot of consumables in Diablo.
Definitely not a fan of inventory management. I know you guys could probably assume that. I don't want to have to worry about holding on to consumables and having space allocated to them. I don't like it in PoE. It's annoying. The only reason I put up with it in PoE is because the game is so good. I don't want to have to put up with it.
Before. After all, if we have an entire tab for that, which is the same size as the equipment tab, then there should be the same amount of consumables as equipment, theoretically, and quest items. So I think this is a hint that, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're picking up. Maybe you're going to collect like 20 or 40 different things for quests, and so you need a whole nother tab for it. But then again, the inventory could just be completely redesigned in the future. We'll have to see. It would be cool if you could put equipment in all the tabs, right? If that's the way you want to go. That's sort of interesting seeing this tab feature, and kind of interested to see how it fills up as we play the game. Now, one of the biggest surprises to me is that Diablo 4 developers have actually stated that the strength of your character is not going to come mostly from items, and I think this is an important point. Blizzard developers have stated their goal is for your power to come from a mixture of sources like skill upgrades, endgame systems like the Paragon board, leveling, and then finally items as well. Now, this is pretty surprising.
I do hope that items are a bigger emphasis in your gear. Now, I do think that obviously the Diablo 3 version of, well, once you get this item and this item makes your earthquake do 5,000% damage, and then you combine it with the other item that makes every single time that your earthquake does damage, you cast a, Wrath of the Berserker, and it makes you do 1,000% damage. And then you put those two numbers together, and you're doing 3 trillion damage. And now your rank, 10,400 on the leaderboard because your damage is awful, because you don't have the helmet that makes you do 800% damage whenever you're dealing 700% more damage. And then also if you have enough damage multipliers, you have an attack speed multiplier. So yes, I think that Diablo 3 was like way over the line, but I really liked how in Diablo 3, the base game, and like this is the same with like classic WoW, is like you'd get a new piece of gear and you could feel it. Like, what was the first thing that you would do whenever you got a new weapon in WoW back in the day? You'd go to, you'd queue Warsong You'd queue Arathi Basin with the boys. Because you wanted to fucking feel it. So yeah, I mean, like, I think weapons and gear should absolutely be the main way that your character is more powerful.
Surprising because items are so central to almost all Blizzard RPGs and most RPGs in general. Hunting for loot is just a core part of these games, and if items are only a part of that, I'm wondering what the other parts are that could possibly compete for your attention in the end game, because you're constantly always seeking loot. So I'm curious, are you just going to go out and grind XP instead of looking for loot, or is loot just going to be sort of a side objective? I'm interested.
I think that Path of Exile does it in the best way. That obviously the difference in power between somebody who's level 95 and level 100 can be substantial, because that's probably like maybe one other notable node. But other than that, like you can get almost that way, that far. But a character that has 1 mirror worth of gear is not as powerful in a demonstrable way as a character that has 5 mirrors worth of gear. And the fact that that can exist, I think, is amazing. So I'm very much an advocate of gear becoming better and better and better over time. I just don't think it should scale to the extent that it does in Diablo 3.
to see how they end up pulling this off in the end. Another big part of Diablo 4 is actually going to be your mounts. Finding new and rare mounts beyond just horses is actually going to be part of the Diablo 4 experience. So I can only imagine, are we going to be riding demons? And what's interesting about mounts is that mounts themselves can even equip items which grant stats and change their appearance, or can make them even move faster. Now I'm curious to see how big a role mounts are going to play in Diablo 4, and to be totally honest, I'm not too excited about the mounts. I mean, moving faster is...
I'm willing to indulge in this, and this is not just as a balding mount collector, but are mounts going to effectively be your followers? Because we had followers in Diablo 3, and I thought followers, like, how many of you guys had the follower, and then you gave them, like, you either gave them the ring that, like, put, like, the damage zone on you, or it had, like, the sword where it would have, like, the demon spawn, and then you would pull mobs inside of the chain. Yeah, Unity
is great, but it does sound like they're going to be a pretty big part of the game, and it could be sort of like your companion
whenever you mount them.
Since there's not going to be mercenaries or companions like there were in Diablo 3 and 2, so perhaps mounts is sort of taking that place. I'm also curious how mounts are going to affect PvP. Is it going to be sort of whoever gets their dismount attack off first is going to get a big advantage, or how soon after taking damage can you mount up again in PvP? So I wonder if it's going to be a lot of like remounting a lot in PvP, but hopefully Blizzard finds a good way to balance mounts and make it a fun system that works. Now, another big innovation in Diablo 4 is that creature types have an increased chance of dropping certain items. So, for example, bandits, they're going to have an increased chance to drop maces, crossbows, and boots, while drowned, which is sort of an undead creature that came out of the ocean, are going to have an increased chance to drop pants. Other monsters...
So this is something that Path of Exile has. Like, you see a lot of people that were farming, I think, Tower for a while to get doctors out of Tower, because they were high value, and like now you see a lot of people farming, I think it's like Crimson Temple. I see a lot of that now, and I just worry that if they have like a couple of really, really good chase items from one specific mob type, and you don't have trading, because what trading does is trading also creates a supply and demand function. Because, for example, like one thing that I did a lot in PoE is I would run like the divination maps. I think they were called fucking like Putrid Corridor or Putrid Cloister. And I would run these all the time, and I'd make my money back on them because a lot of other people were not doing this. So like if you have everybody farming doctors and you have everybody farming headhunters, then the value of them is going to go down. So, of course, you know, conversely, the value of other things is going to go up. But whenever you don't have trading, you don't have these supply and demand correctionals to stop that from happening. So I would hate for it to be where, like, because this item drops only from this area, you have to farm the shit out of this area indefinitely. But if it's something like in Diablo 3 where they had, what was the ring where you could equip a set item with one less piece? It was like the Ring of Royal Grandeur or something like that. And you're able to get it relatively quickly after playing for maybe like 5 or 8 hours or something like that. Then I think it's kind of okay. But it just depends on like how long that chase item takes to get.
Monster families like Skeleton, Fallen, and others will have their own increased drop chances, which hasn't been revealed yet. I think this is an interesting change. If you're looking for a specific piece of gear, you're going to go, okay, Skeletons drop gloves. I'm going to go to this crypt and just farm for my best in slot glove, and sort of that sort of is how it's decided, right? So
and that does sound
if that's
cool.
Sort of the way we're going to do it, if that's their intention behind making certain monster families drop certain
things. The
things.
extent is what worries me.
Ultimately, how it turns out. When it comes to weapons, what I find interesting coming in Diablo 4 is that each weapon type is going to have inherent characteristics which can't be modified. So for example, bows, they're going to do plus X% damage to distant enemies. Staves are going to do plus X% damage to crowd-controlled enemies. So it's going to sound like this has really, it sounds like this really has the potential to control how you play the game. For example, if you're using a bow, you would almost want to be shooting at enemies that aren't even on your screen anymore, right? Like an entire screen away to maximize your damage bonus.
That's why you download the hack that increases your maximum view range like you did in Diablo 3, so you can off-screen the mobs with your basic attacks with the old Demon Hunter. You know, I mean, I didn't do
or
that.
If you are wielding a staff, you're going to want to choose all crowd controlling skills to ensure you're always getting that plus damage. So I think it's going to depend on how much plus damage actually it ends up being to determine if players actually completely change their play style depending on what weapon they're using. But it also does feed...
I'm also very much a massive advocate of allowing classes to play totally weird builds and having a build for warriors or barbarians that is a bow. I remember whenever they made a actual weapon throw build in Diablo 3 that could actually clear Inferno. I thought that was so fucking badass. And I love seeing builds like that.
In sort of the realism, the fantasy, the immersion of using your weapon properly, right? If you're using a bow, you probably shouldn't be in melee range. And so this sort of encourages players to use their weapons.
But what if there's a spell or a bow attack that's like a fucking, like a spread shot where you're shooting like 5 arrows and it actually becomes good to be in melee range and it scales with strength instead of dexterity? I don't know. I think that'd be interesting. I hope they try, shotgun, basically. I hope they try crazy shit like that in the seasons.
In a way that is logical. So I think this could be a cool system. Now, another new feature coming to Diablo is dungeons. And what's cool about these dungeons is that you can actually farm specific item slots of gear. So, for example, gloves. I imagine when you mouse over a dungeon entrance, you might get information on it, sort of like a tooltip on what specific item slot is going to drop off the boss or the monsters in the dungeon, so you can decide accordingly if this is a dungeon
games
you
have
want
this.
to do. Now, this is an interesting idea, but I'm wondering how it will be implemented. It could be cool to know exactly what item slot drops and then seek it out, but it also kind of takes away from the randomness and the surprise of finding an item you didn't even know about. Of course, over time,
I don't think that it will if it works the same way as PoE does, where there are certain maps that have a slightly higher chance to drop certain items, but the items that they can drop that's unique to that area, like there are a few things like Bottled Faith, for example, that only drops from Cortex, as far as I know. It's like this will just simply never drop outside of Cortex. So yes, obviously there are some of those, but many of these items just have a higher drop chance in that area.
Everyone sort of learns where to farm certain items, so it might not be a bad idea to just show that in game.
Well, yeah,
so
because Cortex is
in
fear.
Look it up online or something like that. So I think it could be cool. Now, another new change coming in Diablo 4 is that primary stat main effects will be different depending on the class. So, for example, strength is going to increase a barbarian.
This is good. This is actually the way that it worked with in like classic WoW.
Skill damage, but it's going to have actually no effect on sorceresses. Each stat also has a secondary bonus, which is going to actually be the same for all classes. So sticking with the strength example, 1 strength will increase armor by 1, regardless of your class. So this system makes sense, and it kind of allows for more deliberate choices to be made based on your stats. I've started to notice that Diablo 4 is almost trying to be a little bit more realistic, like with how weapons work and things like that.
Which I think is very good, because again, I think that one of the ways that Diablo 4 can separate itself, I don't think that Diablo 4 should even try to compete with Path of Exile in terms of complexity and depth. I think that is a losing battle. The truth is, Grinding Gear Games is a much smaller studio. Path of Exile is a much smaller game, and because of that, it can be more dynamic, they can develop more content, and they will run laps around Diablo 4. That's the truth. And they'll even do that for PoE 2, I think so. But what Diablo 4 can do is Diablo 4 can be that great action ARPG that maybe it doesn't have 1,000 hours of gameplay inside of every season, but god damn it, it's got 200 and they're really fun. It's kind of like the difference between Diablo 2 and Gauntlet, which ironically, I want Diablo 4 not to be like Diablo 2 in that circumstance. I want it to be more like Gauntlet.
More recent news, one of the most massive changes coming to Diablo 4 that we just learned about in the developer live stream at the end of February is that armor will also absorb elemental damage taken, which was only possible through resistances in past Diablo games. Armor will provide 50% of its reduction to elemental damage as well as its regular reduction.
I find it to be boring that it's such a universal percentage. I like how in New World there's armor that is more tailored towards resistance, towards physical and elemental damage. Like, it's not just 50-50. It's lazy. I think that it's lazy. However, there could be unique items that function differently, so I'm not completely ready to condemn this.
To physical damage. So a max level character can get about 40% damage reduction to physical damage through armor, and therefore a 20% reduction to elemental damage through armor as well. Now, I actually enjoyed the separation between elemental damage and physical damage, so this change I don't know if I like. Of course, it helps newer players to not die instantly to cold damage when they have zero resistance to it, but also that was sort of the fun of realizing that you need to go find equipment with cold resist. So this change feels a little bit catered more towards a casual player base, in my opinion.
It absolutely is, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think farming resistances is fun. Like, I understand that some people might enjoy it, and listen, I gain a little bit of fulfillment whenever I cap my resistances in Path of Exile every season, same as I think a lot of you guys do. But the truth is that I think that resistances in PoE kind of only work because they're not binary. Like, for example, you can go up to, like, I think it's 90% max all res. Or sorry, max res for, like, any specific amount. But, like, if for example, the resistances you only had to get 75%, and 75 couldn't go to 76, and it couldn't go to 74, I would think it's a completely useless stat, and it could be taken out of the game, and nothing would change. It's kind of like hit rating in WoW. I feel like hit rating in WoW had no value and was just stupid, and it was bad for the game, and there was nothing good that came out of it, and I felt the same way with expertise. The only place where I thought hit rating and expertise had any value was in dual wielding. I thought that if you weren't dual wielding, hit rating should not even be, it should not even exist. With dual wielding, I think it should, though.
But again, we'll have to see how powerful armor is in the end for defending against elemental damage. The amount of defense items will provide is determined by a new system called item power, which will be shown on an items tooltip, so you can kind of figure out how much armor.
They don't want to call it item level, okay? Like, it's different. It's totally fucking different than item level.
Each of your items is giving you. Monsters are also going to have armor, and that's going to scale with their level, giving them that physical and elemental damage reduction. And I think a lot of players will be excited to hear that Diablo 4 will use the personal loot system. Loot is generated separately per player, so there's no stress when a world boss dies to be in melee range and just click as fast.
Huge advocate for this. This is a great change.
As you can to grab whatever dropped. Loot that you see drop will be yours every single time. Now, overall, I think
as much as I would like to see things like this, like the social aspects of it, where, like, if you kill the boss, you can maybe master loot it to the right person. Fundamentally, Diablo 4 is not an MMO. Everything that you do in Diablo 4 should be achievable solo. There should not be any bosses that take 5 people to kill, and you have to be really good at the game. World bosses are fine because they're fucking easy. They're just basically a checklist item. But fundamentally, Diablo 4 must, in my mind, function as a single-player game 98% as good as it functions as a multiplayer game.
Diablo 4 has a lot of exciting new takes on itemization and an ARPG, and I'm actually really excited to test them out. Which new feature are you most excited about or most worried about? Let me know in the comments below. And that's all I have for you this time. If you guys liked the video, don't forget to give it a like, and you may want to watch this video shown on the screen. I'll see you there.
Well, that was a really good video. I like that a lot. Let me pause this real quick and go back to it.
Hey everyone, in today's video,
I can see why so many people watch this. A lot of people are excited about Diablo 4 for no surprise. I'm so sorry. It is no surprise. I do hope that what I think that Diablo 4 needs, and Diablo 4 did this very early on, and then they never did it again, at least not whenever I played, is they need benchmark bosses. Path of Exile is the GOAT for this. There is a point where you can beat Shaper, you can beat Elder, you can beat Uber Shaper, you can beat Uber Elder, you can beat Uber Shaper, you can beat Searing Exarch, you can beat Uber Searing Exarch, you can beat Maven, you can beat Uber Maven, you can beat the Formed, you can beat the what's it called? The Hidden. You can beat the Feared. You can beat I'm trying to think. Those are probably the hardest ones. Like Uber Elder. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Delve. I don't know how to say his name. And each of those bosses, yeah, the Eater of Worlds, each of those bosses is a benchmark that a player can test themselves at and can see up at the top of the mountain, I can get there and I want to get there. And the rewards for getting there are unique and they're powerful. And I want to do that. Because the biggest problem that I think Diablo 3 had is that there was no incentive for me to keep playing the game after I pretty much built my character and I was 90% of the way there. Because, like, okay, like, I'm going to clear a greater rift so I can clear a greater rift. Wow. Some fun now. It's fucking boring. It's so boring. That's why I quit. It's garbage. Like, what type of an end game is that? It sucks. So yeah, I 100% hope that they add in these pinnacle benchmark bosses, and they did this with like the Uber bosses in Diablo 3, and then I feel like they never really expanded on that beyond it. Now I do think that there is some positive in this, because in Diablo Immortal there are benchmark bosses. And hopefully hopefully there are these in Diablo 4. It's just that you can get to them by spending time instead of money. So yeah. So in Mythic Plus bad? Yes, I find Mythic Plus to be boring to run over and over and over. And I would enjoy it more if the dungeons had scaling types of difficulty, or theoretically if only certain dungeons were available above a plus 20. So, like, imagine if there was a special chance whenever you completed a key over a plus 20, or all keys over plus 20s were different dungeons. So, like, instead of having to do Temple of the Jade fucking Serpent over and over and over, you had, like, the absolute penetration level of the worst, the shittiest, the most punishing, the most ass-fucking dungeons that you can possibly have above 20. So we're talking Cathedral of Eternal Darkness. We're talking Seat of the Triumvirate. We're talking Lower fucking Karazhan. And all of the other massively brutal dungeons. Like the original fucking Scale Up, the original, what was it called? BRD. Scale Up BRD, give it a 4-hour timer. Fuck it. Yeah. Gramrail Depot. Yeah, let me think. Like, maybe there'd be one more. I'm trying to think about another, like, really... Oh, Halls of Reflection. Oculus. Yeah, 4 hours, not enough time. Yes, a 4-hour timer. No ports. That little fucking machine isn't active. You have to deal with it. Yeah, Halls of Reflection to a plus 20 if you would only ever complete a 19 because you'd have no plus 20 experience. Yeah, that's right. I think that would be fine. And also, maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe it would be really bad, but I wish they'd try it. I think it'd be cool. Because it'd be way more interesting to me than just doing the same thing with a bigger number. Personally, I find that part of Mythic Plus really boring. And that's what I really hope that Diablo 3 or Diablo 4 doesn't fall into the trap of. That the idea of harder content is the same content with a bigger number. So that's what I think. That's where I'm at. Experimentation is huge in these kinds of games. Yep, I think so. Hamster wheel can get really boring. I agree. They already have trouble balancing the 8 that we have, though. Yeah, that's true. And I do think that are the dungeons right now imbalanced? I think that Shadow Moon Burial Grounds is too easy. It's too much easier than everything else. Because I would say all the other dungeons are not... And by the way, I think all of the other dungeons should be as easy as Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. I think dungeons are way overloaded with mechanics and it's not fun to play anymore, personally. But I would say that you have to have uniformity. Because if you don't have that, like, not getting the key feels bad at that point. As easy as COS. Yeah, COS is another one. Affixes should be fixed and balanced before balancing dungeons or Mythic Plus, in my opinion. Well, I think there's an easier solution. Take out affixes. Well, how about make the game better for once? Imagine that. Yeah, I hope that happens. I mean, we'll see if it ever does, but I would love to see this happen. Okay, we'll watch this. I think we need something funny to watch before I get back into that game. Give me 1 second. Let me pause this. Oops. There we go. Okay, and also let me link you guys this video. I forgot to do that. I think this video is really, really good. I hope he makes more videos like this. I can't wait to watch them. Make CC important again? No, I completely disagree. I think CC is shit. Crowd control in games is boring. It's not fun. And to be honest with you, the reason why people used CC back then was because they were garbage. Excuse you, wants this one and it's a doozy? Yeah, I bet it is. As a Mythic Plus pusher, there's weeks where you just don't push because affixes suck ass. Yeah. Well, I also think that you just have, I don't know. I mean, like, I think the game's too fucking, the game is too complex now. Like, whenever I watch somebody play Mythic Plus and they have like there's all of these tools. Let me say it like this. If there were no combat awareness tools, we would not be playing the same World of Warcraft. And I think that is awful. The fact that the game is designed and is played competitively with this many tools. CC's okay on Albion, though? Well, I mean, I don't know. Albion's mainly a PvP game, so I'm not sure if it's any different. So should take, just want to sit there and face roll huge damage? Yes! Yes, I absolutely fucking think so. Will never happen in any game ever. Oh, it absolutely fucking does. In Elden Ring, it happens all the fucking time. Yeah, I want to round everything up. I want to fucking, and you know what? It is skill-based because you're managing all these fucking mobs and you're getting your rotation and you're doing it fucking perfectly and you're getting every single big cast off, massive numbers all over the screen. You don't give a fuck what the mobs are doing. You know why? Because they're dead. It's boring as shit. I disagree. I found Mythic Plus and Legion to be way more fun. Straight up. At the end of the day, I had more fun in Mythic Plus and Legion because I got to do that more. I don't know. I think that, yeah, Classic Andy take, yes. And you know what was really fun in Classic WoW? Getting all of the world buffs and blowing up the raids. And that's why Season of Mastery wasn't fun, is because you weren't able to do that. It was fucking awesome. That's Unga Bunga brain? So what? It's fun. Bro, if you wanna prove to the world how smart you are, stop playing video games and do something important. Like, I don't give a fuck about, like, oh, I'm going to prove how smart and how good I am at this game. Bro, nobody gives a fuck. It's a game. The only thing that matters to me in a game is if it's fun. And if the game isn't fun, that's it.
A trip on me to